I'm an only child. It was about 6 in the morning on a Sunday, and I was in the living room watching cartoons with both my parents asleep when I heard a knock on the door. It was a pretty Latina woman. She looked to be about 30, and she was holding a cardboard box. There was a big white van pulled up in the street in front of my house with a man in the driver's seat. She told me that the box was for my parents, and she asked me if they were home. I told her yes, but they're asleep. She said, "Oh, that's okay. I can come back later." Then she told me she actually had something in the car for me too. She asked me if I could help her get it out. I'm lucky because I had started kindergarten and we had just started talking about stranger danger just a couple days before this. I told her, maybe later when my parents are awake, and I shut the door. Immediately, I told my parents and they didn't believe me. A couple years later, I told them the exact same story, and they realized I didn't make it up. To this day, they have no idea who that woman was, or who she could have been based on the description. My dad did have a substance abuse problem at the time, and he hung out with a couple questionable people. So I wonder if word spread around that he had a daughter, or maybe that someone had just happened to notice by watching our house. I'll never know, but they never came back. I was really young when this happened, no older than 6, but I remember some very specific details. My mom and a family friend had taken me and some other kids to Showbiz Pizza. I was by myself in the game room, and I'm assuming the other kids who were older than me were probably supposed to be watching me, but they weren't. That's when this adult came up to me. I remember getting this strong feeling of dread right from the start. I specifically remember he said, "I used to be a monkey, you know." But I don't think he was trying to teach me about evolution. I think he was really trying to tell me he used to be a monkey that turned into a human. I then remember him asking me to come outside and see his van. The feeling of dread multiplied, and I knew I had to get out of there. I said, "I have to ask my mom," knowing I just needed to get away from him. I ran off and told my mom, and of course he was gone by the time we got back. This happened a couple years ago, and it's time to get it off my chest. I was around 18, and for a period of time I was physically active. I had struggled with some bad habits brought on by excessive partying, and exercise proved very helpful in this regard. I regularly went jogging. One day, I didn't have class until around noon, so I went out for a morning jog, broad daylight and everything. I went on my bike to the tracks, left my bike at the jogging station. I don't know what else you'd call it, but it was a small red cottage where different outdoor clubs hung out. As I'm about to enter the tracks, there's 2 middle-aged men sitting by the cottage. I glance at them, only to find myself locking eyes with one of them. The way he looked at me was deeply unsettling. I'll never forget how I felt when his eyes pierced right through me. My gut's making an honest effort, trying to tell me something's off with this whole situation. These men are wearing jeans and leather jackets. They're definitely not here for the sake of exercise. But I brush it off, and I'm probably just overreacting. Turns out, though, I was wrong. I'd only been jogging for a couple minutes when suddenly I feel like turning around. And there they are, following me in a white van on the tracks. I'm doing my best to think of a logical, non-threatening reason for them to follow me, and I actually can't really think of any. So I'm trying to work out what on earth I'm gonna do. I don't want to make it obvious that I'm downright terrified. If I start running fast as I can, I'm turning myself into prey. Fortunately, I've been on these tracks a number of times, so I know there's going to be a sharp curve not too far away. I try to act as if I'm not the least bit bothered by the whole situation, and as soon as I pass the curve and I'm out of their vision, I sprint down into the woods as if my life depends on it and hide behind a small rock. I'm crouching down as I see a white vehicle pass the sharp curve. Soon they're out of my sight, but I don't dare to move. I know that when they pass the curve and notice I'm nowhere to be seen, they'll know I've run off somewhere. After the curve, the trail's straight for quite some time. They'll know I'm not on the tracks anymore. So, I stay put, thinking that if they're after me, they'll come back. If I'm overreacting, they'll carry on doing whatever they're doing, and I won't be seeing them again. But the white van came back. At this point, my memory's a bit vague. I know I didn't breathe, dreading that the slightest movement will give me away. The van turned around, came back, and slowly passed by me. I remember they went back from where they came, and I was somewhat relieved, though still a bit worried. Thing is, all tracks lead back to the cottage where these men were likely to be. I then decided to carry on deeper into the woods, glancing over my shoulder every now and then to make sure no one was there. I know that there's going to be a highway if I just keep going and making my way home from there. This journey home by the highway would take 3 to 4 hours. Totally worth it, if you ask me. I don't know what their intentions were, but I doubt they were any good. When I was a teenager, my father was overseas in the military, and at the time was the only one in the house who knew how to solve technology-related issues. So, when we switched internet providers and found ourselves cut off, we were lost about how to solve the problem. We called the provider company and let them know we needed them to come in and fix the issue, which I think was replacing the phone or Ethernet jack, something like that. The company told us they should be able to send somebody out in a week. So you can just imagine our surprise when a man in a jumpsuit knocks on our door the next day. He said he was there to fix the internet issue, and my mom and I saw no reason to doubt him, although the timing was odd. His jumpsuit was blank except for a name patch, and all he had with him was a blank clipboard and a tool belt. I can't for the life of me remember what he looked like beyond that. We showed him our apartment and explained the issue, and he got to work. He started fiddling with the wires, checking the phone jack, etc. Since neither I nor my mom had any idea about these things at the time, I assumed he was just doing his job. The man didn't smile, he didn't laugh or attempt small talk with us. Normally I'd been relieved. I hate small talk, to be honest. But for some reason this guy, he made me really unsettled, and I wish he would have said something. I was a nervous teen though, so I just wrote it off as my usual anxiety. I wandered over to the window and glanced outside, noticing that the only utility vehicle was a ratty-looking blank white van. This surprised me somewhat, since the cable company's vans were quite distinct, and there wasn't one of them in sight. Eventually, and somewhat abruptly, the man told us he was done and went to leave. My mother asked him whether or not we owed him anything or if he needed any paperwork, but he just said no and left. I watched out the window and, sure enough, he got into that ratty white van and drove off. For a few minutes, we tried to connect to the internet and found that it still wasn't working. Angry, my mom called the cable company and told them that the person they sent out had just been there and he hadn't managed to fix anything. She stayed on the phone for a while and got quiet, looking like she was about to puke. I asked her what was wrong when she hung up. She told me that the people at the company had reviewed our account and they had no record of any of their employees going to our house. Our appointment wasn't for several days. Whoever had come to the house was not one of theirs, as they had pretty strict reporting systems for house visits. We both panicked and rushed over to the area he'd been working in. Absolutely nothing was different from before. It didn't appear that he had changed anything, moved anything, nothing. It looked exactly the same. Both my mother and I had been there the whole time and we hadn't seen him do anything out of the ordinary. We never did figure out who that person was, why he'd come into our house just to fiddle with the computer cables, and creepiest of all, how he'd known that we'd called the cable company to fix something and where we lived. For whatever reason, my mother decided against reporting the incident to the police. I guess since the man hadn't done anything other than tricking us. Ever since, we've been very careful to make sure utility workers are who they say they are. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed what you saw today, feel free to hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing. If you really like what you saw, I have a few other videos on my channel. Feel free to check them out. Alright, hope you have a good night. Bye.